Hey guys, Lonnie, Real Alcoholic. Okay, chapter 4, We Agnostics. In the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non alcoholic. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. Now, I got this marked, these are the two questions to answer step one. Have I done step one completely? In the previous chapters, we talked about the doctor's opinion. We gave Bill's story. We talked a little bit about the solution. We talked about what proceeds our mental state that proceeds a relapse. We got into a little bit of insanity, right? And in step two, we're talking about coming to believe in a power greater than ourselves that can restore me to sanity. So the insanity was the fact that I continued to reach for the first drink, and I continued to try to control and enjoy my drinking. That was the insanity. So now I'm asking myself a question, man. Am I alcoholic? Up until now, I can ask myself that question and I need to answer it. There's no use continuing the rest of this if I'm still trying to figure out if I'm an alcoholic or not. Um, so there's two questions. And if when I honestly want to, I cannot quit entirely. Now that's when I honestly tried without this program. If I could not quit entirely, or if when I was drinking, I had little control over the amount I take, I'm probably alcoholic. So I've answered that question. Yep, man, I am a real alcoholic. There's no doubt about it. I had every good reason to stay permanently stopped, and I could not. And every time I picked up that first drink, for whatever reason, anger, remorse, depression, just to have a good time with the folks next door, no matter the reason for picking up the first drink or the excuse, I never could control it. I never could control and enjoy my drinking. So, to be doomed in alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. This alcoholism, we showed the progression of this disease. Bill showed it in his story. We can read chapter to the wives, right? A lot of us start out as moderate drinkers. Some of us are alcoholic from the get-go, but a lot of us grow into this. But the progression of the disease, um, the circumstances, our physical and our mental deterioration, it gets worse. It never gets better. And we will die from this. And it's a shame that most of us have to get to the point of death before we accept these 12 principles, before we accept these 12 steps and give them an honest try, give them an honest go. Um, but there is no other solution if we are alcoholic. Now, Alcoholics Anonymous may not be the only way to sober up an alcoholic, but guaranteed, if the alcoholic does not get entire abstinence and permanent sobriety, we're facing the gates of death. That is guaranteed. No different than any other chronic disease, which is the miracle of this. You get a chronic physical condition, you will die from that physical condition. Same thing with alcoholism. It is chronic, it is deadly. We're going to die from it if we don't find a solution. So at the bottom, if a mere code of morals or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. But we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. We didn't have the willpower to keep ourselves sober. So lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power which we could live. It had to be a power greater than ourselves. This part here, I was mistaken a long time. I was thinking that if I learned a better code of morals, I thought AA was a better code of morals, right? I thought AA was a philosophy of a way of living, like some good tidbits, like the Stoic philosophies, man. If I could just memorize these good little motivational tidbits, then I could motivate myself into staying sober, or I could motivate myself into being happy, joyous, and free. Man, it's not that at all. Because I tried that. I tried every possible thing I could get my hand on to get motivated in the spiritual sense, in the psychological sense, in the physical sense, and none of that gave me permanent sobriety. And so it's not a code of morals. It's not a self-discipline. It's not these philosophies of the religious principles. I've learned a lot of good religious principles when I was going to church during my drinking career. None of that was enough for me to actually apply what was needed so that I could find some peace and comfort and not return to the bottle. I needed a connection, a relationship with a power greater than myself. And so we're at this point, and we're like, okay, well, that's obvious, but how am I going to find this power? The church tells me about this relationship with God. The other systems of faith tell me about this relationship with God. I thought I had a relationship with God, and I still could never stay sober. Okay, well, that's what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. And that is what this book is about. Nothing else. Alcoholics Anonymous is about nothing else. The main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. Smashing that home. Okay, so we bring up the idea of God. Man, a lot of us, we just evaded or entirely ignored this subject. My whole attitude, most of my life was, that works for you, fine. I'm glad you're finding some peace and happiness. That's not for me, bro. And that idea did not work for me so very well. Now, a lot of us, we come in, man. We have some honest doubt and some honest prejudice. Man, I see things with church people that I'm like, hell no. Why the hell would I want to go to that organization when I see some of these people doing this and that and this and that and all the other, right? That's an honest doubt. That's an honest prejudice. Sometimes I would study things and one group would say this and another group would say that. It even happens in the Buddhist stuff I studied. You got one faction that says this and one that says that. And I'm like, I have some doubt, man. I have some doubt. Who's got the answer? So I had some honest doubts and prejudice. Then some of us have been violently anti-religious. Now here's the ones where the word God, immediately my mind would snap shut. Okay, so we can have some varied traits in our agnosticism. Okay, page 46 talks about those brief times in our past when we looked at the sky or we looked at the stars, we looked at the moon. Maybe we were on a mountain looking over the valley. Maybe we were just simply sitting by a creek watching the minnows, right? And we got this sense of awe. We got this sense of wonder. Like, what's the purpose of all this, right? And so there was a feeling inside of us, that we did, man. We had this natural inclination to wonder if there was something greater out there, if there was something that made all of this. Was there a creator? Was there not a creator? We question these things. So they go on to tell us that none of us, it's impossible for us to fully define or comprehend this power which we call God. So the best any of us can do is, when we get this personal relationship, is we get a small inclination of what this might be, what this power might be. But to fully comprehend it or fully understand it, it's not in our the capabilities of our finite minds. So much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with Him. Once again, we're making contact, people. We're not just using our imagination. We're not just using wishful thinking. I am not faking it till I make it. We are going to make a conscious contact. So as soon as we admitted the possible existence of creative intelligence, spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. We found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek Him. Okay, all of a sudden here in step 2, man, once we admit or even consider the possibility of this power, the possibility of God, the possibility of a creative intelligence, possibility of a spirit of the universe, all of a sudden we start sensing a new power. Now, we're powerless in step 1. Step 2, we start sensing a little bit of new power. Provided we take other simple steps. Because, see, we've done that for years, man. We looked at the stars. We pondered the existence of God, right? And like Bill said, for brief times, maybe there was a sense of a union or a connection. But that was soon lost because we did not take other simple steps. Okay, we, Alcoholics Anonymous, we found that God does not make too hard of terms with those who seek Him. Now, this too hard of terms, there's nothing hard about this program at all. There's no one thing in particular that anybody has to believe in. We can start where we're at. It's not like... It's like physical sobriety, man. I know a lot of people that they feel like, oh, well, I got to sober up before I can go to an AA meeting. Man, that's bull crap, right? Bill W. was drunk when Ebby was talking to him. So AA meets us and God meets us where we are at. So in the spiritual sense, if I am just completely lost, I have no sense of spirituality whatsoever. I either I wasn't raised in a spiritual type family, or I turned from the religion of my youth for some reason or another. Whatever my prejudice, whatever reason, I'm just not buying this God thing. Okay, even that is fine. Just the possibility, just the idea that maybe there is, just the consideration is enough for us to make a beginning. And these simple terms, which is why I'm a big book thumper to the max, man. These simple terms, these 12 steps is what's needed to recover from alcoholism And that's what we're concerned about. I am not concerned about your salvation. I am not concerned about where you're going after this life. I am not concerned about ancient civilizations 12,000 years ago and what kind of technology they had that was more than what we have today. I could give a shit less. That's for each individual person to decide for themselves. What we are concerned about is establishing a relationship on simple and understandable terms with this power so that I can stay sober. And once I'm sober, once I'm in my right mind, once I've been restored to sanity, if I want to pursue these other questions, man, that's on me. I can. And I can pursue them as deep or as shallow as I want to. That has nothing to do with my sobriety. My sobriety is based on simple and understandable terms. Okay, page 47. When therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. This applies too to other spiritual expressions which you find in this book. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. At the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to effect our first conscious relation with God as we understood Him. Afterwards, we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was. All right. These spiritual expressions, the word God, in my mind, it would bring up Jesus. Okay? God. In my mind, it would bring up the Native American religion. In my mind, God, later on, that changed to the pantheon, right? So this conception of God, when Bill W. was sitting there and he had his religious, born-again church friend talking about God, Bill's like, man, I'm not quite sure about this religious stuff. Not quite sure. And that's when his friend said, why don't you choose your own conception? And Bill W.'s conception, my conception at the very beginning when I started making progress, was creative intelligence, spirit of the universe, some type of universal force. There was something out there, and we call this thing God. So I had to see what these terms meant to me, and I had to start real simple. And it was just a matter of willing to consider the possible existence. And that's all it was. Okay, page 48. We often found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, unreasoning prejudice. Many of us have been so touchy that even casual reference to spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. This sort of thinking had to be abandoned right there. And we're going to end this session right there. When it tells me that I had to let go of old ideas, we read that. Man, almost every reading, almost every group is going to read the first part of chapter 5. And it says I had to let go of old ideas. So what am I letting go? I am letting go of my spiritual convictions. This really hit me hard. When I came back to the program, I had done all this studying. I had done all this research. I had done all these rituals and these practices and what have yous and what not, right? And so with all this self-educated spiritual experience, I had to let all of that go. And I did. You know why? because it made sense. Because everything I knew, everything I thought I knew, was not keeping me sober. It was not helping me find peace and contentment. And that was obvious. The hard part was being humble enough to say, Lonnie, you just don't know what you're doing. And that was hard. When it came to spiritual matters, I had realized that my self-education, what I thought, just because it came to my mind and I thought it was right, that might not be so right. So I did. I had to let go of those. I had to let go of those ideas. Man, that set aside prayer we say about God, help me set aside what I think I know about this program, what I think I know about this big book, what I think I know about spirituality. Everything I thought I knew, I had to set aside. And I did that. I did that concerning God. I did that concerning sponsors. I did that concerning this big book. And over time, I've seen that some of those things, yes, I was correct. Yes, that was a legitimate statement. Yes, that is a legitimate practice. Okay, and some of those things I could incorporate back into my recovery and my daily way of living. Some of them not. Some of them I was shown it was just some stupid, ridiculous shit. I was just imagining things and thinking that was the right thing to do. I was putting two and two together. I was making five, and I was so spiritual, right? Some of those things that I had learned, some of those things I was practicing, yes, they're applicable to Alcoholics Anonymous. They're applicable to me staying sober on a daily basis. Some of them, not. And I have learned that when it comes to my relationship with God, is I was inventing stuff just so I could feel good. And that was a hard lesson. That was a hard lesson for me, just to invent something up and realize I was doing that just so I could feel good. And so when I took after this thing a little over 3 years ago, I let those old ideas go. And I started new. Me and God started this new relationship. And it's been a slow but fruitful process. I can promise you. Okay, guys. Next one we'll end the chapter. All right. Take it easy. Bye.